What's up, everyone? It's Lance here, the host of the See-Through Podcast. Welcome back for another solo episode. I have a ton of fun material to cover on this episode, so how about we just jump into it? Let's do it. Guys, we did it. It's spring, and you know what that means? Daylight savings time. The days are longer. We can now see my RP brothers and sisters out there can rejoice, and we can praise the light gods, and I'm happy. When daylight savings time comes around, that means spring's coming, and spring coming means summer's coming, and summer is my favorite season. And honestly, I'm from North Carolina, so winters up here in New York City are brutal to me, and I hate the cold. Bring me the warmth, bring me the sun, and springtime is here, so let's celebrate. And ironically enough, it is literally cold and rainy today, so New York doesn't care. And you may have noticed it already, but I got a nice little flag here. Things like that, I hope, just kind of elevate my podcast and just make everything feel a little bit more polished and professional. And another thing that you may or may not have noticed is my hair. My wife's a hair colorist. My wife colors my hair. I get keratin treatment. I get the whole 9 yards. I get, the split ends cut off. How do you think I have, such luscious hair? So yeah, here's a picture of me in the process looking very, very goofy. And since we're on the topic of spring and daylight savings time, I wanted to bring up a opposite viewpoint of daylight savings time. Believe it or not, there are people out there who despise daylight savings time. Which sounds completely bizarre to us RP folks who like the extra daylight because nighttime isn't our friend, really. But there are people out there who claim that daylight savings time is enabling laziness. Here's a tweet from Sagar, who you may recognize from Breaking Point News. This is what he has to say. Last beautiful and bright morning in the 6 a.m. hour for nearly a month. Hope the happy hour is worth it, folks. Tells you a lot about society that is willing to mess with the sunrise for the leisure class's comfort and screws those who make shit run. And then that's also him retweeting it. And before that, he said, 12 days until clocks shift forward, dooming the productive class to dark mornings for months. Also, people can drink outside 1 hour later. Hashtag Team Standard Time. And you know what, Sagar? I usually appreciate your points, but you're denied hard on this one, dude. I think it's a shame to insinuate that you can only be productive in the morning. And I think it's a shame to insinuate that if you appreciate daylight savings time, that you're lazy. That's just completely false. He calls the productive class the ones who get up in the morning and make shit run. And bro, you can be productive at nighttime, especially when there's daylight outside. Daylight savings time, I like it. And I think it's a little elitist to say the productive class. I'm pretty productive, and I love that extra hour at the end of the day. How about we just agree to disagree? I brought this up because I think it's a little interesting. For everyone who celebrates something, someone's a hater of it. And for everything that someone's a hater of, someone loves. Even daylight savings time, which I thought was something that was just universally loved. Guess I'm wrong. All right, moving on. Coffee break. It's my coffee mug. You can buy it online. But yeah, you can buy that mug. I have t-shirts on there. I just dropped a new orange t-shirt to celebrate daylight savings time. I got other logo tees as well that are Champion brand. So very high quality. I have a hoodie on there and I have a hat. But you can buy my merch at seethroughpod.com/merch. There's also a link in the show description of this episode. Just click that. And it's free shipping in the United States. Shipping and taxes are included in the prices. And I do ship worldwide. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can buy merch. Just want to throw that out there in case you didn't know. And if merch isn't your thing and you want to support the podcast, with your hard-earned money, you can visit patreon.com/seethroughpod. And you have two options there now. I added one. There's $1 a month for just general support. And basically, you're helping me out. You're helping me pay for all the fees that I have to pay, to keep this independent podcast, going. The other option is you can pay $5 a month and you'll get instant access to a lot of exclusive content that you can only see and get on Patreon. So go check that out. Running this podcast is not free. Any support helps, and I appreciate you. Thank you. And if you don't want to drop any money, that's all right too. You can help me out for free by simply subscribing to this YouTube channel, liking the video, leaving a comment. Do it for the algorithm. Also, make sure to follow me on social media. My handle is at See-Through-Pod, and that goes for every platform. If you're streaming this episode, like on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to subscribe or follow the podcast on that platform. You can also rate the podcast on those platforms. I'm truly trying to build this thing, and I can't do it alone. I need some help, everyone. Thank you. All right, so what else has been going on in my life? I just put out a really killer episode featuring Justin Bishop, who you probably already know about. And he gave me so much insight. He has retinitis pigmentosa, which is the same, eye disease that I have. Shout out to all the RPers out there. But yeah, he's fully blind due to RP, which is pretty rare, especially for someone his age. He's in his, late 30s. So long story short, from my point of view, with someone who is not even legally blind, to talk to someone like Justin, who is fully blind from RP, and to hear his point of view is super, super fascinating to me and educational for me and just inspiring, honestly, because he's handling it so well. And there was something that Justin told me during that episode that truly blew my mind. And I've had other guests on the podcast say it to me, but for some reason, Justin's the one who really kind of is sunk in, the idea of what he said sunk in. And what he said that going fully blind makes life easier, not harder.
Going fully blind makes life easier, not harder.
Controversial statement, right? Someone out there with their vision is like, nah, I'm good. I'll keep my vision. But I think what he's talking to, and the point of what he's saying is for us people with conditions like RP, where we still have some vision remaining and it's slowly going away over time, that process of losing your vision and the mental toll of accepting your vision loss is what makes that process so hard. And that once you finally, in his words, reach that finish line is when there's no more adapting, because everything you learn, you're just putting into use now. Once you reach that finish line, there's no more concerns left over, how will I preserve the little vision I have left, and etc. And then once you adapt to something and learn a skill like using screen readers, canes, etc., now you're just kind of living. So I found that very encouraging. It was almost like Justin had this mentality shift, like everyone, he grieved his vision loss, but once he got to a certain point, you kind of learn to accept it. It's kind of sink or swim, honestly. So that got me thinking. And I came up with basically an idea. I have a theory, and I'm going to throw this theory out there, and it may be wrong. It may be right. Parts of it may be right. Parts of it may be wrong. I don't know. But this is my theory, and I want to get it out there. And I wonder if anyone else thinks this way or has thought this. So here we go. Let me put my theory out there. And my theory is, and this kind of crosses over, right? This kind of crosses over to all disabilities. Could be RP, could be Stargardt's, it could be cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy. It could be any disability. But I'm going to explain and talk about it from the retinitis pigmentosa point of view, because I have retinitis pigmentosa. So it's the thing I'm most knowledgeable on. So I'm going to use that as an example. All right, so here we go. Here's my theory. My theory is there are 4 phases of blindness.
4 phases of blindness.
When it comes to these phases that I'm talking about, everyone knows and has heard the phrase, blindness is a spectrum. And there's a literal spectrum, right, of how much vision you have versus you don't have. Do you have central vision or do you have peripheral vision? It's basically our eyes are like tie-dye shirts, and there's not one single design that's the same, So it's a spectrum, But to take that even further, there's a spectrum of acceptance about blindness. And I think that's where these phases come in. My theory and my own personal spectrum that I'm kind of talking about in this episode kind of involves, the literal sense of like, how much sight do you have, but also where are you at on your acceptance of your sight loss or disability? Like I said, I'm going to give the example of RP. I'm going to share this from my point of view. So phase 1 in my life was when at 12 years old, I was diagnosed with RP. And it did not affect me 0%. It just doctors could pick up that I had RP. My peripheral vision was intact. Everything was good. I couldn't even honestly tell you that I had RP. The only reason they told me I had RP was because they did specific tests and told me I had RP. So that would put me in phase 1. I'm newly diagnosed. My vision's intact. Phase 1 might also be, you have to wear glasses. You have a visual impairment. You need corrective lenses to see. And once you put your glasses on, you see 20/20. You're in business. You're in phase 1. And you might stay in phase 1 forever. If you can correct your vision with corrective lenses, then you're in phase 1 forever, basically. All right. So that leads me to phase 2. Phase 2 is where I'm at. I've lost peripheral vision. I have some central blind spots. Like I can't see my hand when I put my hand here, but I can see my hand there. Weird, huh? So phase 2 is like where I'm at, where I'm not legally blind, but I have pockets of blind spots. In certain scenarios, I have night blindness, but I'm not legally blind. So I don't use a cane. And I can pass as someone who's sighted. I am experiencing vision loss. I am experiencing symptoms, but I'm at the very beginning stages of vision loss. All right, so that leads me to phase 3. Phase 3 is legal blindness, which means you have 20 degrees less of vision out of the regular 180, or with corrective lenses, you see 2200 or worse. In phase 3, you're starting to use a cane out of kind of necessity, because you're starting to have more and more issues. You're running into more people, et cetera, et cetera. You may start to enlarge the text on your phone or computer or your cursor on your desktop computer. You are legally blind, and there's really no way you can hide it. Like for me, I can hide my RP still. Like I honestly still can. But if you're in phase 3, you can't hide it anymore. You're at least a part-time cane user, and you've started to kind of adapt your house in terms of how you design things. Your cursor size, your phone screen text size, all that. But you can still see enough to where you can watch a movie, that kind of thing. It's kind of like what a former guest on the podcast told me, Ben Fox. He likes to say, I'm almost blind. Phase 3 is that really complicated phase of I can see, but I can't see. All right, so that leads me to my final phase, phase 4. Phase 4 is complete blindness, which is where Justin Bishop is living. In phase 4, you're not a part-time cane user. You're a full-time cane user. You're using audio descriptions when you watch movies and TV. You're using screen readers. You're using audio to kind of help you do things and hear text messages, etc. That's the final phase, right? Phase 4. All right, so I got my 4 phases out there. A lot of you are probably like, I already knew all this, Lance. All right. Well, that's cool, but let me keep going. Maybe I'll surprise you. So I want to talk about the spectrum of those phases, right? So you have the literal senses of like, all right, phase 1 can see this much. Phase 4 can't see that much at all, if at all. So that's the difference in literal, like tangible vision you have and what you see. And then there's phases 2 and 3, which is kind of, I'm in phase 2. I'm a self-proclaimed phase 2er where I'm not legally blind, but if you reach your hand out for a handshake, I probably won't see it. And I struggle to see at night, and I don't drive a car, things like that. But I can pass as sighted, and I don't have to use a cane, even in New York City. And phase 3 is when you can't pass as sighted, and you have to use a cane at least part-time. And while you're using a cane part-time and you are considered legally blind, you can still look at your phone and see the screen. You can still watch movies without audio description. My mom would be in phase 3. So this is where my theory starts to get interesting, I think, right? depending on what phase you're in, right? Like for instance, I'm in phase 2, and I talk to someone in phase 4, part of my podcast, right? So if you're legally blind or, completely blind, you're in phases 3 or 4, you've done your time and firsthand, through firsthand experiences, how you feel about your blindness and also how you personally adapt to your blindness and how others adapt to blindness. And you've had adequate time. I'm going to imagine that you've had adequate time to process your vision loss. So if someone's born blind, they bypass phases 1 through 3 altogether, and they basically, right from birth, have been living in phase 4. So someone who is born blind and is born into phase 4, they're not really going to understand what it's like to go through phases 1, 2, or 3. Or if someone is born into phase 3, if someone's born legally blind, they're not going to really understand what phase 1 is. They're not going to understand what it's like to have full sight and then lose it over time. And then the person who's losing sight over time in phase 1 and phase 2, they're not going to understand what it's like to be born blind or to be born legally blind. I have friends who were born legally blind. And, for example, like they didn't get to drive a car ever, whereas I did. I drove all the way up to the age of 27. So for someone like that who was, kind of born into phase 3, legal blindness, they might feel jealous and bitter towards someone who got to experience phase 1 or phase 2. And I'm not calling anyone out. And I'm not saying that their jealousy or bitterness is incorrect. I think it comes from a valid place. And I guess the reason why I'm bringing this up is you have to have a self-awareness. You have to. When it comes to the blindness spectrum, I think it's great to have a self-awareness, and especially if me as a podcast host, I in no way ever want to pitch myself or present myself as I'm your one-stop shop to learn all things blindness, because it's impossible for me to teach everyone about blindness because I have so much vision left remaining. Like I said, I'm in phase 2. That's why I interview people. That's why I bring guests on, because to provide, full range of the phases and to give advice to everyone, I have to bring guests on because as someone in phase 2, I can't tell you shit about using a cane. And that's what makes this podcast interesting, I think. I hope so, is that you're hearing from someone who is learning about what's coming up ahead, and you're hearing my point of view, and you're hearing me have breakthroughs, like understanding these phases. And you're also hearing from people like Justin, who are, in phase 4 and have, years and years of experience and wisdom to share with someone like me, who is like trying to be like basically a sponge and just soak it all up. And I also want everyone to know that I'm self-aware that I am in phase 2. And some people in the blindness community may be so far ahead of me in their phases or where they're at in the spectrum that they may not care what I say. They may be like, yeah, just wait till you're in phase 3, wait till you're in phase 4, wait till XYZ happens. And that's fair too. I just think that being self-aware, knowing where you're at and your place, I guess, on the spectrum, I can't claim that I'm the same as Justin Bishop. He's fully blind. It gets a little hazy, I think, when people use the word blindness lightly. It's like the word visually impaired. When I was 12 and got glasses, I was visually impaired. Some people who are legally blind, instead of saying legally blind, say I'm visually impaired. But technically, I could have said I was visually impaired at age 12. So there's all these adjectives and descriptors that kind of people vary in how they want to present themselves. But I think it gets weird too if someone like me, for example, said I'm blind. I think that's invalid. I think what's true is if I said, I'm on the blindness spectrum, I'm part of the blindness community as someone with RP who has this podcast and is going through vision loss. I am part of the blindness community, but I am not blind, and I think there's a key distinction. And I think there needs to be a level of self-awareness to where if you're someone like me or you're, in a similar boat to me, newly diagnosed, and you're processing vision loss, It's good to know where you are. But to that degree, I want to add, if you're someone in phase 3 or in phase 4, and if you meet someone or hear about someone in phase 1 or phase 2, don't forget that we're all a part of the same blindness community. Have empathy for the someone who got to experience sight and is now losing sight. That's a hard place to be. Is it harder than what your life was or is? I don't know. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not. Living a life with blindness doesn't necessarily mean it's a shit life, you know. Some people who are born blind live better lives and have better childhoods than people who are born sighted or without a disability. There's all sorts of things you got to factor in, you know, where you're born, your parents' income, how much support you had, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, yada, 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 you know, and I'm not trying to lecture everyone, but, you know, people like me in phase 2 really look to the phase 3 and phase 4 groups to kind of learn from, because, you know, we're in the process of losing our vision, and who better else to learn from than people who are doing it? So we need the phase 3 and phase 4 blindness folks to learn from. The phase 3 and phase 4 people, they don't need my advice. You know, they don't need my advice at the end of the day. I'm self-aware enough to say that if you're legally blind from RP, you don't need my advice in terms of how to use a cane, et cetera. Where I think I come in is for people like me in phase 1 and 2 who are learning about disability and are learning to even accept that they have a disability, that they have vision loss, and are still going through that grieving process and the mental adaptations that are required. I think that's my forte. I can't give you advice on how to use a cane or a screen reader, but I can talk for days and days and days about mental adaptation and frame of mind, perspective, mentalities. So that's what I bring to the table. But I guess I just wanted to bring up my theory of the phases, and that there's a spectrum of blindness in the literal sense, like how much you can see. There's also a spectrum in the sense of where are you at on the acceptance of your blindness. And other factors can go into that, like what age did you hit phase 3? What age did you hit phase 4? What age did you hit phase 1? So a lot to consider. That's my theory. If you're living with blindness, I would like to task you with thinking about where are you at on the spectrum? How self-aware are you about where you are on the spectrum? And how can you talk and learn from others who are further along on the spectrum? And also, I would like to say, if you are in the phase 4, if you are completely blind or you are legally blind, what can you learn from the people who are new to it? How can you help them? They're in vulnerable emotional states. You know, you may want to roll your eyes like, they'll be okay. They just have to learn, right? And that's true. We just have to learn. But in the same way, you're the best examples. You're the best resource. So I would hope and I would advise everyone who is in phase 3 and 4 to show some love to the people in those early phases. Help us learn, you know, even if we are annoying, even if we aren't self-aware and someone in phase 1 or phase 2 is calling themselves blind and you're like, bullshit, you're not blind. I'm actually blind. Hey, just remember, we're all part of the same community and let's all try to get along. You know, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And self-awareness helps. And also, when it comes to these phases, I think it's very important to remember that if you're transitioning from one phase to another, if you're going from being diagnosed to now you're experiencing vision loss, you're now from phase 1 to phase 2, that transitional phase is tough because it's new, it's foreign, you're processing everything, you don't really know how to adapt, you're figuring it out. And when you're going from phase 2 to phase 3, so you're going from losing vision to now you're deemed legally blind, you can't drive anymore, etc. That's an extra hard transition because you're going from sight to legal blindness, and that's a very confusing place to be in. You're not blind, but you're not sighted. Where do you fit in? Should you use a cane every day? I can see good enough in this environment to not use a cane, but at nighttime I need to use a cane. What is life? How do I adapt? These transition processes, when you enter different phases, is the hardest part of it. If you're 10 years into phase 3, I guarantee you that you're way more accepting of your blindness than you were when you entered that phase initially. So the longer you're in a phase, the more, normal it becomes for you, and the more you can learn to adapt and be the best version of yourself. And you truly are learning how to live in that phase, So, and then when you go from legal blindness to complete blindness, Justin Bishop's saying that, that initial transition is very hard because you got to really, really learn everything there is about, living as a blind person. You're now a full-time cane user, etc. But once you learn it, there's no more transitions left. There's no more, only transition left is death. Womp womp. And I know that's grim to say, but that's true. And I think that's what Justin meant when he says it gets easier. There's no more transitioning. Once you learn something, it's good. It's baked in. It's now part of your skill set, now part of your repertoire. So yeah, I think that's what he's talking about. These transition phases, and how once you finally become fully blind, there's no more transitions. And then you can fully just live and accept things. If you have that warrior type of mentality, that let's kick life in the balls kind of mentality that Justin Bishop says he has, and I believe he does have if you watch him skateboard. So I'm not going to say which phase is better, best, worst, but I will say that when you're transitioning from each phase, it's very difficult because everything's new and there's an adjustment period. And honestly, if I had to guess one, I would say the hardest transition would be from phase 2 to phase 3. I think from phase 2 to phase 3 might be the hardest mentally, in terms of adaptation, because you're going from being sighted to legally blind. And I think that kind of confusion and reliance on what vision you have left and worry about retaining the vision you have left, I think is mentally taxing and hard. So I don't know. But my point is, let's all keep this in mind when you meet someone in the blindness community. If they're going through a transitional point, have some empathy with them. Understand that they're going through an adjustment phase and that, they're learning basically as they go, and we're all learning as we go. And if you are in the phases 1 and 2 and you meet someone in phase 4 or 3, just remember that you can use their wisdom to help you prepare yourself for those phases. Let's all learn from each other and help each other. All right, so let's talk about some articles, some things happening in the blind community, in the disability community, what's going on in the world. Here we go. Here's article number 1. Let's talk about Candace Owens. By the time this episode is released, this will probably be old news, but I wanted to give my 2 cents on what's happening in that situation. And in the off chance you have no clue what I'm talking about, let me explain it. Candace Owens is kind of in the hot seat right now with the disability community, after she made some unkind remarks in the sense of Kim Kardashian's Skims brand, which is women's underwear, and how Skims use, a model who is a wheelchair user. Candace Owens did not appreciate Skims using a model in a wheelchair, and it just seemed to confuse her. And I think it'll make sense if I play for you what she said. So let me play that for you here. Here is her comments that got her into trouble.
Really? That's all I'm going to say is really. I don't really understand how far we're going to take this inclusivity thing. I really don't get it. I don't know. And if I'm wrong, again, educate me. Today, I just want to be educated in the comments. If people that are in wheelchairs were thinking as they were looking around, like, what really upsets me? That I've never seen a bra and underwear advertised with a girl in a wheelchair. Why did they do this? I don't know. I don't know why this needed to be done. I'm just getting tired of this all inclusivity thing. It seems ridiculous. Look, I assumed that people that were in wheelchairs also have to buy bras and have to buy underwear. It's just something that I just assumed that was a thing. I didn't know that we needed to see that in our face.
And this is what Candace Owens was talking about. This is the image she saw when she was looking at Skims underwear. Candace Owens, what are you doing? What are you saying that? Why are you saying that? Why does it bother you so much to see a model in a wheelchair? It's really nothing. Like, why is that something that you feel you need to get on camera and talk about? Why are you trying to group disability inclusion in with leftist shit? This is what bothers me about it, right? I hate when conservatives discuss accessibility requests and activism as if it's something that only the far left need or are requesting or wanting.
So basically every campaign for anything now needs to look like we need the token black person, we need the token fat person, we need a person that is disabled, we need the trans person to show that we're inclusive and that we're loving. The other reason is because they want to placate the literal mob. There was a mob that descended on me yesterday.
Accessibility is neutral of a political party. There are disabled Republicans, there are disabled Democrats, and there's disabled people all in between, the far left and the far right. The disability community has every type of person, every ethnicity, every gender, every sexuality, everyone. Don't link accessibility with the left, because it's not true. Candace Owens, let's not forget that anyone can become disabled. I have RP, I'm losing my vision, but I could also get hit by a bus tomorrow and then be a wheelchair user. Anyone can become disabled. And as you age, you may become disabled. Not maybe, you will become disabled. If you live long enough, you will be disabled. So, anything that makes things more accessible is going to help you at some point in your life. So let people make things more accessible. That's all this is. And I know you may be saying accessibility versus disability models are different. It's not, because the Skims product line that she's discussing was made specifically to help people in wheelchairs or living with disabilities, be more independent, which is something that I guarantee you Candace Owens would appreciate if she happened to become disabled one day. She would not have this opinion. It's actually an elitist opinion that she has, where she's saying that keep that shit separate from the normal shit. Keep that wheelchair shit away from me. I want the normal shit. That's what she's saying. And she knows she's wrong, but now she has to double down on it. And she won't admit she's wrong, even though she had tons of people on the internet go after her. So after being in the hot seat, this is how she had to respond.
Oops, I did it again, people, and not in a good way. Landed myself in some hot water yesterday. Very surprised. Suddenly I was being tagged by a ton of people that were in wheelchairs. And there's no other way to say it other than they want to whip my ass. I need your help. I'm in a lot of trouble. Let's talk about that. First and foremost, let's debunk the idea that I am an ableist. I thought that was really, really interesting, that I somehow wanted to pursue disabled people and I wanted them out of spaces, because that is an absolute nonsense. First and foremost, as I said, if you are a listener to the show, you know that I often talk about my pet peeves of ad campaigns where you can no longer see the product that they're advertising for.
All right, so here she's talking about, she's not mad that it's a wheelchair user. She's mad because she can't see the product that's being advertised. Tell me in this picture where you can't see the product being advertised. Tell me where in this photo that you can't see the product. I would love to know that. So what are you even talking about? All right, let's hear her talk more about this.
I do want to make a couple of notes, though. First and foremost, it is important for me to tell the world something, irrespective of whether or not you're black, disabled, or you are fat, whatever the issue is. I want you to know something. Everything is not for you. That's the truth. Nobody wants to tell you guys this. In a way where everyone's like, I need to be seen everywhere. I need to see myself everywhere. Everything is not meant to be for you. So maybe you are a diabetic and you are watching a commercial for ice cream. Guess what? Maybe that particular commercial, not sugar-free ice cream.
But you're seeing the commercial. You're seeing it. Take your own advice. Those Skims line might not be for you. Move on. Candace, you're the one who made the comment. You're the one who brought it up. You should have take your own advice. See the ad for Skims. It's adaptive clothing line. Not for me. Move on. But instead, you publicly talked about it, and now you're backtracking. Take your own advice.
Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you have no hair. Maybe you're born with a condition that means that you're not able to grow hair. And you're watching ads for shampoo. Guess what? It's not for you. I imagine
That's also a really stupid argument, because what you're saying, shampoo, having no hair in shampoo ads is completely different than someone living with a disability and is a wheelchair user. That you can't even group those two into the same thing. Are you trying to compare having no hair and seeing a shampoo ad versus being a wheelchair user and needing, actually needing tools and clothing that you can actually use, and adaptive clothing that makes your life better and helpful? Are you really comparing the two? I don't even know how much I want to play about this. But basically, she's saying inclusion doesn't matter, and that everyone, if they really wanted to, could find find a way where they don't feel included. And yeah, there's some truth into that. But that's like, what does that even mean in terms of your argument, Candace? It's like, you're the one who made the comment. The disability community didn't make the comment. The disability community is angry at you for making the comment. Literally, none of this communication would have happened if you didn't make that comment. You're the problem. Don't get mad at the disability community for coming after you if you're saying dumb shit. If you want to address the disability community, be prepared for them to come back at you. That's how this works. You know that. Maybe it's all part of your plan anyways. The Two Blind Brothers had a really interesting post and perspective on this. Here's what they said.
Here's my perspective. The commentary, people say, I don't want to see this. This is stupid. If this is the thing that causes you to make a post or a comment and take time out of your day, you are screwing up. You're really, really, really screwing up, because you have to be forward looking. If you're getting so deeply involved with something that does not affect you personally, you are getting played. Think about the things that actually affect you and lean into those things.
And I did not take his advice. I did take the time out of my day to talk about this on video. I think it's a great thing to end on when discussing this Candace Owens piece, because we got better shit to think about. We got better shit to do in our day-to-day life. How can you make your life better today? Don't let Candace Owens ruin your day. Don't let Candace Owens affect your self-esteem. If you think inclusion matters to you, and seeing someone in a wheelchair and seeing a model in a wheelchair matters to you, then that's all that matters. I think it's safe to say that there's always going to be people out there who think completely different than you, and they're not going to change their mind. They're going to be hard-headed, just like Candace Owens is. And you just kind of have to learn to accept that. There's going to be hard-headed people out there. Candace Owens seems like the type of person who you would never want at your party. I'm sorry to say this, but she seems so cold. Like, I feel bad for her husband. Whoever her husband is, I feel bad for that man. I know for a fact that Candace Owens would be a hard woman to be married to. I couldn't imagine that. It's like, does she smile? Does she smile? What's her sense of humor? Like, what kind of movie, like, if you ask Candace Owens what her favorite comedy was, I would love to know the answer to that, It just seems like she's constantly in this cold mood and just kind of has this kind of scornful look on her face and talks down to you in a condescending tone. Oh, man, I can't imagine being married to her. Whew. I think even people who watch her show don't want to hang out with her. I honestly think that even if you're a fan of hers and you watch her show, I think deep down in your heart, you don't want to hang out with her. I think deep down you're like, that kind of question where people talk about, if you could have dinner with one celebrity, or if you could have dinner with anyone, who would you have dinner with? I don't think anyone's picking Candace Owens. She's just too cold, man. Too cold. And that's me being very nice. That's me being very nice, to use the word cold. But yeah, that's all I'll say about the Candace Owens, shenanigans. My main point is that I just hate when accessibility issues are grouped and linked to being progressive or is like part of the progressive agenda. It's not. It's all the same. Accessibility is for everyone. It doesn't matter what political party you're in. And that's the main point I wanted to make. All right, so let's move on to another topic. I want to talk about another divisive public figure, and that's Elon Musk. And more specifically, I want to talk about the Neuralink that Elon Musk is developing. If you didn't know, Neuralink is a neural interface technology company that Elon Musk is running. And essentially, they're developing a microchip that can be implanted in your brain, which will basically make you essentially like, for lack of a better word, like a cyborg. To quote Elon Musk on this, he's basically has called Neuralink like a Fitbit for your brain. It's a microchip that kind of monitors your brain activity and can simulate, brain activity. In fact, one of the coolest things I've seen come out of Neuralink is a test they've done with a chimpanzee, I believe. They basically implanted a Neuralink in a monkey's brain. And there's a video online. In fact, I'll show it to you if you're watching this on YouTube. Actually, let's just watch it. It's a monkey basically playing video games. He's playing Pong, the classic game where you move, your line and you bounce the ball back and forth. You can't let it, your blocks, can't let it get past whatever those two lines are. Wow, that's probably the worst explanation of Pong ever given. But everyone knows what Pong is, hopefully. But yeah, here's the video.
One of the things the Neuralinks allow Pager to do is to play his favourite video game, Pong. To control his paddle on the right side of the screen, Pager simply thinks about moving his hand up or down. We've removed the joystick altogether. Now that he's up to speed, let's increase the difficulty and see how well Pager can play with the Neuralink. As you can see, Pager is amazingly good at Mind Pong. He's focused, and he's playing entirely of his own volition. It's not magic. The reason Neuralink works is because it's recording and decoding electrical signals from the brain. Great game, Pager. And what better reward for a monkey than a banana?
So Neuralink's legit. It has monkeys playing video games with their brain. So how does that play into blindness? All right, here we go. Let's talk about that. The article is titled, Neuralink's upgraded brain chip hopes to help the blind see and the paralyzed walk. And I'll have a link in the show description if you want to read this full article, because I'm just going to take bits and pieces of it. So here we go. Let's cover it. The latest version of the company's N1 chip, which they're talking about, the Neuralink, the chip that goes in your brain. It's called an N1 chip, is intended to be implanted in brains and spines. Neuralink, the startup Elon Musk helped found to connect our brains directly to computers, showed how much progress it's made since its monkey mind Pong moment in 2021. In a wide-ranging update on November 30th, 2022, I'm guessing, Musk and a handful of researchers explained how the latest version of the company's implantable brain chip might help the blind see or restore movement to those with spinal cord injuries. The company, one of the 5 that Musk leads, is working on technology to drop thousands of electrodes thinner than a hair into the outer surface of human brains. So this is how Neuralink works. Each electrode is a tiny wire connected to a battery-powered, remotely charged, quarter-sized chip package that's embedded into a spot that once held a circle of skull. The chip, called the N1, communicates wirelessly with the outside world. The technology is still far from initial medical uses, much less Musk's ultimate vision of using Neuralink to hang out with superintelligent AIs, but the company is making significant progress, including applying with the Food and Drug Administration to begin human trials. It hopes to start within 6 months. Yeah, they want to start human trials for the Neuralink. That's wild. Would you sign up to be a part of that trial? I don't know. But let's cover more of this article. It says, our goal, and here we go, guys. This is what it's talking about with blindness. Our goal will be to turn the lights on for someone who spent decades living in the dark, said Neuralink researcher Dan Adams, who's working on the effort to repackage camera data into a brain-compatible format and pipe it directly to the visual cortex. And I may be wrong. I'm not a medical doctor, so if I say anything wrong, you can claim misinformation on me. But if you think about it, like our eyes are just basically sending signals to our brain to tell us what we're seeing. But the brain is really what's showing us what we see. Isn't that weird to think about? It's almost like the eyes are cameras for the brain. So once, if our camera breaks, there's no image, The eyes and brain are working, as one unit to show us what we see. So I guess what they're saying is, this chip, how they want to do it is this, and I'm making this up basically. This is how I interpret this. I may be completely wrong, but how I see what they're talking about, what I envision they're talking about is they'll be able to use camera data, so some sort of external camera on your face probably will connect to the Neuralink in your brain, and that camera data will tell your brain what it's seeing, essentially letting you see. It's coded in a certain way that lets the brain actually know what's being sent to it. Your brain will then understand what the camera's showing, which will present you with vision. Pretty wild. On another note, it says Neuralink tech to help people with quadriplegia walk. Previously, Neuralink showed how its electrodes can listen in on brain activity by capturing brain signals from a monkey named Pager that played the classic Pong video game. At a recent event, they revealed a new trick from a different monkey. A monkey named Sake used its mind to follow prompts and to type on a virtual keyboard. The implants charge wirelessly with monkeys coaxed by a fruit smoothie to sit beneath a charger embedded in a branch immediately above their heads. But Wednesday's biggest developments use those same electrodes to signals back to the neurons that make up the brain and nervous system. One experiment used electrodes in a pig's spinal cord to control different leg movements, a technology that could lead eventually to helping people with quadriplegia walk or use their hands. Neuralink's approach involves not just intercepting the brain's movement commands and shunting them to the legs, but also hearing the sensory signals from those extremities and sending them back to the brain so the brain knows what's going on. Wild. And it says they have a lot of work to do to achieve this vision, but I hope you can see how the pieces are all there to achieve this. So he's saying, it's not there yet, but they basically have proof that this has a lot of potential and is already kind of working, and that they just need to fine tune it and make it better and better and better. They also mentioned in this article that Neuralink is not alone, that there's actually more companies doing the same thing, trying to come up with the same thing. So this isn't just an Elon Musk thing. This is something that a lot of people are working on, different companies are working on. So it's kind of exciting. Not only do you have, the gene therapy approaches going on, the stem cell therapy, the gene therapy, the gene therapy basically would help code, blindness out of your genetic code altogether, in newborns, et cetera, like through CRISPR technology. And then there's stem cell therapy, which would help regenerate growth, in my eyes, for example, could help people who have lost vision, gain vision, or stabilize their vision. And on top of that, you got technology being developed that could potentially help blind people see. So you got a lot of things in the works. I know, for decades now that has been said, there's a lot of things in the works, but it truly seems like as technology keeps progressing, when science too keeps progressing, that it does seem like at some point they will figure this out. And that's cool. That's cool because, I'll remind everyone, if I have a kid, my kid has a 50% chance of having RP. So if all this is in the works now, let's say, when my kid reaches an age where if he has RP, it's affecting his vision, maybe by then there will be more resources and tools and ways to help him, retain his vision. So it's just interesting. That's why I like to keep up with it. And Elon Musk is like a hate him or love him type of guy. So I figured bringing up his name would make you click. So, well, that does it for this solo episode of the See-Through Podcast. Thanks for sticking around with me. Thanks for listening to my long-winded explanations of things. I hope you think the articles I cover are interesting. I hope you're enjoying these solo episodes. I'm really, experimenting with these episodes, and trying out, new things. I'm trying to keep this show spicy and interesting, so I hope it's working. And I hope you're also getting to know me a little bit more through these solo episodes. So yeah, thanks for listening. As always, I appreciate you as a listener. But before you go, click that subscribe button if you're on YouTube. Leave a comment, like the video, share it with a friend. If you're streaming, follow or subscribe to the podcast on that platform. Rate the podcast there. Leave a review. That helps me a lot. And if you want to support me financially, don't forget that I have merch for sale. I have a Patreon. You can get exclusive content. You can get some really cool merch. It's actually cool. I promise you it's cool. Go check it out at least look at the website. The link to my Patreon, the link to my merch is in the show description. Click there. Also in the show description is links to all my social media pages. So follow me on every platform. And if you want to get in touch with me, direct message me on Instagram or email me at theseethroughpodcast@gmail.com. But yeah, that does it for this episode. It's springtime. I know it doesn't look like it, but hey guys, we're in spring. It's daylight savings time. Let's have some fun. And as always, stay transparent.